This painting is called Yankee Doodle Went to Town, from a child's rhyme. This is an example of postmodern painting. Why is it postmodern? It's called postmodern because it's based on a modernist painting by Wesselmann. And when Wesselmann made this painting in the 60s, he was talking about American affluence, an American government, American values. A picture of Lincoln, fruits and vegetables, the TV set, the cap. It's a picture of an America that's content with itself. In my picture, I took his basic composition, the table, the portrait, the Capitol, but I changed it because our reality is different. Instead of Lincoln, we have oil workers drilling for oil. And on my tablecloth, I wrote the word Halliburton. And I tell you what an impact the oil industry has on our government. And now we're going to move to the next painting. Portrait of two women. And one woman, we have a famous guest here today, represents Bonatine. She's much, much more beautiful than I painted her. I want her to come up here. And this is a painting of a young lady named Christine. Bonatine was demoted for taking a very important ethical stand in Washington. And she'll tell you about her story. Christine Axsmith worked for a subsidiary of the city called BAE Systems. And in a private, personal, secret blog, she wrote the words, "Waterboarding is torture." And she was fired the next day. Now, where's our rights? I don't know. Bonnie, will you please come up for a minute and just say hello to the...
I just loved your caption because I'll be telling you some more about what whistleblowers are. And she captured it here by saying that these are two American heroines fired and demoted for their dedication to truth. It says it all.
Thank you so much.
I couldn't believe it. You know what a wonderful day. It was a harrying day at work. I'm still working for the Corps of Engineers, and it came in my box. And boy, I started walking taller because I had no idea that anyone, an artist, would be inspired, with the story that was
very
so
inspired.
American
Inspired.
and so real.
This painting is also a postmodern painting. Why? Because I based it on a painting by a German artist named Richter. He did a portrait of a young girl. And this young woman is actually Ulrike Meinhof. She was one of the founders of the Baader-Meinhof gang, otherwise known as the Red Army faction. And there was a violent gang in Germany that tried to change the government through violence. This portrait, Richter's portrait, kind of makes her beautiful, compelling. And I thought, what a perfect composition to do that. In our society, we took two heroines and treated them in a criminal way. In his society, criminal and made her a heroine. So I kind of turned the tables on Richter. So that's how this painting originated. This work is called Days at the Races. Days at the Races. Actually, there's a movie you may have seen called Days at the Races. It was a comedy. But this is no comedy. The left side of the painting represents the 9th Ward, all the people who drowned, lost their homes, lost their businesses in New Orleans after the flood. The right side of the painting represents Michael Brown. Now, who is Michael Brown? He was the head of FEMA, Federal Emergency Management. What was his background? He was a lawyer, and for 10 years, he was the commissioner for the International Arabian Horse Association. Now, to ask you, how does a man whose background is in Arabian horses get to be the head of Federal Emergency Management, especially after 9/11? How does one get to that position? And I'm trying to just contrast the people who were desperate for help and the people in charge of helping them, and how unfair was that? How unfair was that? This painting is called Great American news. We know it's not great. In the middle, I have a portrait of a typical reporter, smiling, with theatrical masks on either side of her. And on the bottom of the painting, I took elements from James Rosenquist's famous painting, F-111. What Rosenquist did is he showed America in the 60s as a combination of consumerism and militarism. And I've incorporated that into the problem: who owns the news? What's going to become of the news? News should never be a business. News should be a right of the American people, not a business. And I wanted to show you another installation behind you. This installation is called Little Ray. And we see stones, we see children's blood, we see a basket and a young woman in red. When I first heard about this story on BBC, I couldn't believe it. I thought it was some farce. I actually couldn't believe it. But then I saw the story again on Huffington Post, and I saw the story again on UNICEF, and then I saw the young girl's on BBC, and I realized it wasn't a joke. Apparently in Somalia, a couple of years ago, a young girl, a 13-year-old named Aisha Ibrahim Duhalo, was walking to her grandmother's house, and she was raped by 3 men. Well, her parents, of course, were very upset, so they went to the police. Unfortunately for them, the town was under the control of the Al-Shabaab. Who are they? They are a radical, fundamentalist Islamic group. So they immediately arrested the child, dragged her to the stadium, and in front of spectators had her stoned to death for the terrible crime of having sex before marriage. So instead of arresting the 3 men, they arrested the child. So this is a memorial to Aisha. Since I have a teenage daughter myself, I couldn't help but get very upset about this story. Let's move on. This story is called Helen of Troy. Helen of Troy being the ideal of beauty in every society. And it doesn't make a value judgment. It just says that what we think is beautiful is what we're exposed to. And in America, we're exposed to magazines, fashion magazines, bathing suit models, MTV, movies, where women are half undressed. On the other side of the world, Muslim women are of images of being covered, of being modest. It's a very different outlook, and that's all it says. It says, how do we see what's beautiful? What are we exposed to? What do we see every day?